Start again with the second session about conservation of World Heritage with a commitment in terms of environment. Well, again, good afternoon. We're going to start the second session of today, conservation of cultural heritage, new technologies and environmental commitment. So our idea for this session is to rethink conservation of cultural heritage with a more contemporary vision based on environmental responsibility and commitment that are not contrary ideas, but just the opposite. So we are in a very important moment in terms of climate challenges. Conservation cannot be understood as keeping the past as it was, but we have to add this commitment towards the future. So we're going to be analyzing 4 case studies and reflecting on how science, technology, and sustainability get together into World Heritage Conservation. So we're going to start with the intervention of Juan Chiachio Ruano. He is professor at the University of Granada. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about his expertise, his resume. He's the director of the IMP Lab Research Group, an intelligent forecasting and cyber physical structural system laboratory, and he's the head of the Andalusian Inter-University Institute of Data Science and Computational Intelligence. He's a professor in the area of continuum mechanics and structural theory at the University of Granada, and he also teaches in the École d'ingénieurs des travaux de la construction in Caen in France. So he's going to show us a case study entitled From Archives to Algorithms. And he has 20 minutes. We are a little bit behind schedule, so please stick to the time. Okay, so thank you very much, Montse, for this presentation. And thanks to the organizers for this invitation. So I have to say that I don't like calling myself a new technologies expert, but now I would like to know if I am projecting my slides or not. All right, can you hear me now? Okay. So the goal of this presentation is basically to show a potential technology that could support the conservation of cultural assets from the point of view of data management, right? It is a potential technology. Well, the current situation in terms of World Heritage conservation in this kind of monuments, such as the Alhambra. So we have, on the one hand, information. We're starting to collect, to gather information, and we have multi-mode information. We have, this means that we have data files, we have sensors, we have images like video, photographs. So that's why this is multi-mode. And currently this information is siloed. It means that a part of this data is hosted in the cloud. Some other parts of this data are in local servers. And so we have a diversity of storages for the information. So the real situation is that we have another important aspect for this kind of information for World Heritage buildings. We have a lack of knowledge or some kind of incertitudes regarding the physical aspects of the building, the structural integrity, energetic efficiency. And to know all that, we need to create models, and to create models, we need data and insights. And we have buildings like this with a very complex architecture and with many dimensions that can represent obstacles to the generation of this knowledge, right? So we need to study all this, to create models of all the physical aspects. So this is the kind of data we are collecting, and we are in this situation of a lack of knowledge that implies creating models and generated insights, because we are dealing with a lot of uncertainties. So our target, our final goal, is to protect these buildings. As a society, we have this responsibility. We need to leave these buildings in the same state or in a better state. And we have to do it in a cost-efficient approach, in a cost-efficient way. To do so, we have new technologies that are arriving now. There are starting to be available. So we have this situation where we have a multi-mode information that is siloed, and these uncertainties in terms of the physical aspects, and this challenge of preserving and protecting these assets. We have one solution, right? Not the only one. We have one solution that could allow us to increase the amount, the density of knowledge about these assets, would be the creation of what we called a digital twin, which is a virtual reproduction. So you may be already familiar with the concept of digital twin. It's this virtual representation of a building, for instance, or virtual replica. So we have this digital twin, this tool, which is a computational model or a digital model of a physical asset. So we need to represent this asset. So this is the key word, right? Represent, showcase, or show. I mean, we don't need a precise model. We need a representation of reality that offers us a vision about the needs and the features of this asset. So we, for instance, if we want this digital twin, we don't need the geometrical reality. We just need, for instance, for the energetic systems, we would need a representation of the energetic needs, but not necessarily of all the geometry or all the aspects. So to do so, we create models. So at the end of the day, this digital twin is it's nothing else but an integrative technology that allows us to create, based on data, to create a lot of answers for the question, what if? So I don't need to carry out a lab essay about the Alhambra, because I can't do that in order to test the resilience of the building. But I can actually create this digital twin and then apply different digital situations. And to do so, we need data. So this is the great value of these technologies, that they allow us to make these questions, to ask these questions. What if, what if, what if? So we've been seeing many projects around World Heritage, and in the area of buildings, we have the BIM technology. BIM technologies are very well known in the building sector. BAM, BIM technologies. So these tools allow us to create digital replicas, 3D representations of reality, and we can also enrich that model with captures, readings of sensors, and many other options. But BIMs are associated to a number of technological barriers, because this technology is created specifically for the design and construction phases. So it's not so streamlined as other technologies. So in that context, the European Union in 2021 launched an initiative. Well, it was actually a European directive regarding the energy efficiency of the buildings, and in that tool, in that direction, they introduced a new concept, the digital book of the building. Well, a digital book is an attempt to reduce the complexity of the BIM models in order to overcome these obstacles I just mentioned. So for the Alhambra, we can create a BIM model, but for instance, we have a community of owners, for instance, in a building, and they do not have the means or economic or technical means to create a BIM model, but they could develop a digital book for the building. That's a more affordable option. So the EU started with this kind of options and concepts. So in order to create this tool that is more affordable to gather all the data regarding efficiency and in smart metrics and many other options. So this is what the EU said about the digital book. So this digital book can also be connected to other institutions, such as the property registries or the institutions that award different green labels, for instance. So it was a tool to gather all the information of a building. And together with this initiative, the Digital Building Logbook, the EU launched 2 research initiatives throughout the Commission, the Research Council. So they launched 2 call for proposals. So institutions, European companies, they gathered together in groups. So we participated in one of those initiatives, that the one that is called Build Chain. So that's one of the 2 digital logbooks models carried out in Europe. So in the case of Build Chain, which is the one I'm going to present now, is a pilot project for the digital logbook that is really focused on the data governance. And the other one is more focused on the apps that can be developed based on these tools. So what's Build Chain? Build Chain is a data model that can be a support for the building logbook. And in this slide, I want to show that we're not a theoretical project. We have 5 pilot buildings. We are very lucky, thanks to Monse and her institution, that we have access to the Hospital Real here in Granada, which is the headquarters of the university, and we are gathering multimodal information about this building. We are creating this structural model up to date, and we are collecting real-time data. So in case you don't know the building, I encourage you to visit it, because it's very beautiful, and it is also a building that it's in use. So it is a heritage site that is currently being used, and it also implies a number of challenges. There are many renovation works ongoing most of the time, so that's also a challenge for us. So what can we do with Build Chain? The main challenge here is to translate this physical multimodal information that we collect from this building, which is geometric information. We have also point clouds. We have models that we are creating ourselves. We have a master plan from a couple of years ago. We have captors and sensors, and we've created this scenario of heterogeneous multimodal insights. And with all that, what we've already modeled all this data. So we have created this data model. That's what you're seeing in the slide. It is a semantic information model, which is very similar to what we do when we're teaching a child to speak. So we show them an object and we tell them how do you pronounce it? So that's what we're doing here. You see some points in there, very small ones, notes. You can also see it in 3D. If I have the time, I will show it to you, because you're going to see that it is a real physical model. So we have the nodes, as I was saying, we have data regarding the materials, the integrity of the building, the physical aspects and dimensions, many things. And as I was saying, the reality is that what we have here, which is the very heart of the model, of the data model, it's the layer behind our digital twin of the building. It is a semantic layer where we organize our information. This very varied, very wide and heterogeneous information, we are organizing it here based on the ontologies, specific ontologies that didn't exist before. We needed to create them, these ontologies, to deal with all the insights, so about the type of materials. So we've created more ontologies besides the one that we already had. And in the end, the final users, we are about to finish the project, and the user is going to have access to a front end product, right? So the user is going to have the opportunity to introduce data in a secure way, of course, because we also have a layer of blockchain technology. As you know, blockchain technologies are a tool that allow us to secure the verification, the reliability of the information and of the source, which is who's producing this information, right? So if I am issuing a technical report where I certify a number of technical properties of a material, I am signing it, and I am an authorized source of information. So if I introduce all this information in the blockchain, then we have more security about the reliability of this data. We can also have external certifying authorities, and this blockchain layer actually is essential, because we have many information that is produced at the level of the building that is very sensitive information, and that can be used by insurance companies, and that may need, for instance, this information in order to know which is the value of the building, which is the integrity, the energetic efficiency. So this information can be anywhere, right? It has to be stocked in the blockchain system. So that's why we have this blockchain layer, in order to ensure that this part of the sensitive information is protected. And in the end, this solution, this potential solution we are working with for the protection or the conservation of the heritage sites, in this case the Hospital Real, will have this kind of look, right? Will look like this. So this is a panel where you can see different functionalities and functions. So the user or the administrator, depending on the permissions you have, you can access to different functions. You can see the BAM model, you can see the materials, we can see what kind of, what certifications have obtained the building, and in case there is a renovation process ongoing, we can also follow it on the platform. So this is like the skin, this final layer of apps. But the most important is how this work we've carried out for organizing the multimodal information, because we can't wait, or we can expect to find all the information in one single source. So we need to manage this variety of sources, and we need to use the language of our system to create the models. And from here, the next step, well, this is where we are at now. I can show you a little bit more if you're interested. And some other things we're thinking about in terms of research, not so much for the development, but for the research. Well, if we've managed to create a structure for all this data and to create a model for our building, we could also create a small language model that is similar to the GPT chat, but with a difference. GPT chat is a large model that uses a lot of knowledge that is available on the internet, and all kind of knowledge coming from different tech companies. But here we could use a small system, a small language model that could use only our information in a very similar way as Google did or Wikipedia did already, but with much less information, of course. And with that, we're going to create this small language model so the analyst or the manager can use it as an assistant, as a support in order to make decisions or to get information, to be informed about what is happening. I had a small mock-up, but I didn't bring it here, sorry. I've showed it many times during the event called the Night of Researchers. So I had prepared a number of questions, real questions, and so the model could answer me. And I told the model, well, talk to me about your structural integrity. And it would tell me, well, according to the last information, there hasn't been any changes during the last 24 hours. But yesterday, my structural integrity was good, green, or whatever. So that kind of things. It is another way to relate, to interact with this tool. And we can communicate with this tool. So this is more or less all I wanted to share. If you have any questions, I have a lot of information. We have a website, we have videos. So if you are curious and you want to know more, we'll be very pleased to share everything with you. So, okay, these are my email. So thanks again. So thank you very much for respecting the time, and we have a roundtable later on, so we're going to pass to the next speaker, okay?
Now we will give the floor to Elisa Franzoni from the University of Bologna. She will talk about materials and technologies for the conservation and restoration of architectural heritage with sustainability. So she will think about the life cycle of the materials and their environmental impact. Franzoni comes from the University of Bologna. She is the teacher of Sciences and Technology of Materials in the Department of Chemical Engineering, Environmental and Materials Engineering as well. She is the scientific director of the Consortium of Universities, and her research deals with the study of materials applied to the conservation of heritage, and also linked to sustainable buildings. Her research interest has been related to lab works and also about durability of materials and the development of innovative materials. She's author of a wide variety of scientific researchers, around 200, and she's in charge of several researches linked to the European Union with different partners from the sector and also public administrations. She works also with different universities. Several years ago, I had the opportunity to visit the lab where they work there, and they are doing a very incredible and very important work there. So thank you very much for coming and visit us. Thank you. The floor is yours. Buenas tardes a todos y a
And a
todas.
great honor, so thank you very much to the organizers for inviting me. Today I would like to share with you some findings and some experience concerning the assessment of sustainability of materials and technologies that are used for conservation, mostly of architectural heritage. The topic of sustainability of historic buildings is widely discussed. Many authors investigated the energy saving related to conservation with respect to demolition and reconstruction. And there was also a big research effort in energy saving improvement of historic buildings. However, the studies concerning the sustainability of conservation materials and technologies are still limited. So, in a couple of recent studies, together with my colleague, Professor Alessandra Bonnoli from my same department, we carried out some investigation about the possible application of life cycle assessment analysis to materials and technologies for conservation. Life cycle assessment is nothing new. It is a technology described in international standard and applied in every sector, including building materials. But its application to materials for conservation is relatively new. So we tried to use this methodology for studying two categories of intervention. First of all, cleaning, and the finishing by renders and the paintings of ancient masonry. So I would like to show you some results coming from these two studies. First of all, the study concerning materials and technologies for cleaning was carried out in collaboration with the conservators. So we were able to identify a number of possible technologies that are used, divided into these three families: mechanical, chemical, physical, and thermal. And inside all of these, we investigated a number of different technologies, taking into account possibly different materials and mechanical tools. The aim of this study, according to the LCA analysis, was a comparison, and we selected as a functional unit a square meter of clean surface that we identified together with conservators. We carried out a research from cradle to gate, and when possible, we used the primary data coming from conservation companies, then integrated them with a database, which is EcoInvent. The analysis was carried out by a very common software, CIMA Pro 8, and we analyzed different factors of impact. The results are very articulated, but I selected some aspects that, in my opinion, are useful to understand how useful this technology can be for the assessment of sustainability of these materials. For example, in this graphic, you can see the global warming potential of the different cleaning technologies. They are grouped into these categories: water-based method, solvents, poultice, ion exchange resins, mechanical, and laser. And as you can see, the global warming, which is basically the CO2 emission technologies, is much higher for solvent-based method and laser than the other. So it's a higher impact But actually, when we go and look in detail at the results of the different techniques inside the group of solvent-based method, we can see that there is a huge difference between these 4 methods, the first 4 with different solvents, and the ones carried out using the solvent gel method. And this is surprising because the solvents are pretty the same. So looking into details inside this analysis, we found out that the huge impact is not related only to the solvent, but mostly to the cotton which is used for the application of the solvent. So an ancillary materials which could seem basically not important carries a high impact. The same difference between the different methods can be seen also in other factors of impact. And again, I think that the results are useful to better understand which are the steps of the different technologies that involve a worse impact on environment. For example, looking again at the cleaning by using solvent, it was found that the use of white spirit as a solvent is much more impacting than others. And this is due not to the solvent itself, but to the container, which is made of brass, which is much more impacting than other metals, such as aluminum, for example. Or in the case of cleaning by poultice, it was found that actually the different materials that can be used as a support for poultice are very different in impact. For example, this clay, which is called the sepiolite, is much worse than cellulose or others. The second case studies that we investigated is the case of mortars and paints for historic masonry. Here again we made a comparison and we considered 2 different base mortars, both based on natural hydraulic lime, which is a compatible material in conservation. These 2 base mortars were considered having thickness of 1.5 centimeters. Then we considered 2 fine mortars for the finishing of the render, being 3 millimeters in thickness, and then 2 different paints. The method that we applied was very similar than before, so the goal was a comparison, and we considered 1 square meter of masonry. We again carried out this research in collaboration with people working on site who provided the formulations for materials and the amounts. Again, the results are very interesting because they are to some extent a little bit surprising. For example, in this graphic, you can see the global warming potential, so basically the emission of CO2, of different materials compared. On the left, you have the base mortars, so the lime mortars that are used for rendering, while the yellow bar is one of the 2 paints. And here you can see that the paint, despite being so thin, only 1 millimeter, provides an impact which is almost half than the underlying mortar, which is 1.5 centimeters. This means that there is something inside the formulation which involves a dramatic impact. And this can be seen not only for the emission of CO2, but also for other parameters such as the energy demand and other impact. In the graphics on the right, the paint is compared with the finishing mortar. And also in this case, the analysis in detail of the results of LCA showed that this kind of paint, which is a common commercial paint, so nothing particularly advanced from the point of view of material formulation, has such a big impact because it contains one of the most common white pigments that are used in paints, which is titanium dioxide. So it is the pigment in this case to give such a huge amount. So by simply substituting the kind of pigment, it could be possible to obtain a substantial reduction of the environmental impact. So the evaluation of sustainability, the assessment of sustainability of materials for conservation is very important, not only to compare different materials, but also to find the ways in which we could improve the sustainability of these classes of materials. However, of course, we cannot stop here because conservation is a very different field from, for example, generic building material. As we all know, we have several other requirements, and I think that this requires also the development of new materials that can comply with sustainability requirements, but also with other requirements. First of all, I think that the development of new materials should meet the primary requirement of health of conservators. The attention to the health of conservator has rightly increased over recent years and gave and generated the term green conservation to indicate that conservation should not only take into account heritage, but also people working there. And we are also in a complicated field because we have also to comply to a variety of requirements for conservation, which are much more than for new buildings. So we have effectiveness requirement, compatibility and absence of defects, retreatability, and many others which comes from the international conservation charters. So besides assessing the sustainability of these materials, it's very important also to develop new ones that meet all these requirements. From this point of view, there are many research groups in the world working on these new materials. So I would simply give you some examples that come from my own experience, because also in my group we are working since more than 20 years to developing new, greener and more healthy materials. And so just to say that there is something running in the development of these materials, such as the development of biodegradable polymers, the development of less harmful temporary consolidants, and the example with which I would like to conclude my presentation is the example of a new consolidating product that I'm proud to say that we strongly contributed to develop. This material is the so-called hydroxyapatite. It is a new kind of consolidant that was developed mostly for carbonatic stones, so limestone, marble, and others. And this consolidant was developed because it meets many of the requirements that were listed before. Hydroxyapatite is a consolidant which consists in a simple aqueous solution of a phosphatic salt, so no organic solvent, nothing harmful for health, no nanoparticles, and this consolidant is applied as a solution to stone, and by reaction with calcite, it produced a mineral which is hydroxyapatite, which is the main constituent of human teeth and bones, so something absolutely not harmful. This consolidant is compatible and definitely healthy for conservators. It was applied into several artifacts and buildings for trial testing, and now, after a number of years, it also gave rise to several commercial products that you can find from different producers in Europe. What is interesting, in my opinion, is that a couple of years ago, a study was carried out to assess the sustainability of this material, and it was also found, that this material is also sustainable. So, trying to improve the health of conservators usually has a positive impact also in terms of sustainability. So these two aspects should be seen always together and not alone. So, to conclude, by this example, I hope that I was able to show you that life cycle assessment analysis can be a very useful tool for assessing the impact of the different materials and technologies. The results are not always obvious, and they can be used for actually improving the sustainability of the solutions that we use in conservation. The goal of sustainability of materials cannot be considered separately from the health of conservators, because they go together and they should be considered together. And finally, of course, material science can help in developing materials and technologies that are even more sustainable than today. Thank you for your attention.
Elisa, muchas gracias por esta intervención en la que, bueno, pues se ha visto el análisis, la importancia.
Thank you very much, Elisa. We have seen the importance of the life cycle assessment. It is linked to also the importance of data. Both things, both cases are very different, but in both of them we have a common element. I hope that we will have time for the debate. So maybe we could analyze the importance of data and how this can help us to develop new materials that are really sustainable from all the different points of view, environmental, social, and regarding their effects on health and the economy. Thank you very much. So now we will have Pilar Ortiz Calderón.
Pilar is going to present a case study entitled Resilience as the Axis of Environmental Commitment and Sustainability in Cultural Heritage. So Pilar has a PhD in chemistry. She's a professor at Pablo de Olavide University in Seville, and she's director of the master's degree in diagnosis of the state of conservation of historical heritage. She's a member of the Andalusian Council for Historical Heritage and the steering committee of the Campus of Excellence on Heritage, representing the University Pablo de Olavide of Seville, and head of the research group of the Regional Government of Andalusia on the issue of heritage, technology, and environment. The lines of research she directs are based on studies on risk and vulnerability assessment, preventive conservation, non-destructive techniques, and new technologies applied to the diagnosis of cultural heritage. She has more than 100 publications, including articles, books, and books chapters. And we have to highlight the Phoenix 4.0 and Atlas projects about AI and new technologies applied to the prevention and management of fires and natural disasters on cultural heritage. And in 2021, she received the Europa Nostra Award for research into historical heritage conservation. So she's going to be dealing with resiliency as the axis for the environmental commitment. Well, Thank you very much. Good afternoon. It is great to be here today. I think I'm going to learn a lot about all the interventions throughout these 3 working days. So, those who already know me may know that for me, heritage is alive. I mean, it changes, it evolves, and sometimes it dies and disappears, right? So in this process, there is a process of aging, there are a number of threads, and the heritage is not alone, just as us. We have families, we have a society around us, we live in a city, we live in a context of a city that is more or less green or not. And so for heritage sites, it is just the same. So when dealing with sustainability, we already know the SDGs. This is a clear, very clear concept, right? And we know that economy, social dimension, and environmental dimension are involved, right? And in our research groups, we always try to show people how we live in a sustainable development, but based on a particular culture and based on a particular natural or cultural or any kind of heritage, right? So sustainability has to be understood in a context. So this is the only way we have to consider it. We can consider it with the context, cultural, urban, or wherever. And so I would like to talk with you about not only sustainability but resilience as the answer of the community to the challenge of tackling the aging and the evolution of the life of art elements or monuments or whatever. For the resilience, we have 4 chapters. So forcing, capacity of adaptation, recovery. So even though it can be painful, we may think that the extreme rainfall in Valencia, there was not anticipation, right? It is terrible, but it is as it is. There was not previous information, but we are seeing that there is a recovery project. They're working on other points of this process. And since 2010, we are funded, because we've been studying for many more years, but now we have funding for regional, local, national projects in order to analyze threats, risks, resilience points, and all these concepts, always with the goal of creating models that could be applied to old cities, to historic ensembles, to archives, or to monuments, or to any kind of stakeholders that have had the will or the possibility to work with us. So the first models we've been working on are related to anticipation mainly. We have Phoenix projects that is more focused on adaptation, and the latest projects, such as the Atlas project mentioned by the Vice President, are more focused on resilience, right? We haven't carried out any project on recovery. I think we will have to do it at some point, because one of our natural stakeholders, which is the Valencian Institute of Restoration and Conservation, that is now focused on all the works related to the extreme rainfall event, the DANA, and we'll need to work on recovery with them. But for now, this is more or less our ecosystem, we can say, of partnerships. We've been working with South America, not that much in Africa, and we would love to work with them, but well, just to give you an idea. And now I'm going to present the first model of assessment of the level of local resiliency. It was commissioned by the regional government of Andalusia, and the goal was to understand the parameters by which we decide and we know if a municipality is resilient or not. So we carry out different surveys. We ask the experts on the most important parameters. This is what we will be doing in the workshops, I believe, on Friday. And then we obtained a level of maturity model. This is a model where we identify 3 main levels. So we have local government and emergency services involved in resiliency. And in that case, we have a very initial level. But then we will go to the next level where we have involved other institutions such as NGO. This is the moderate level. And then we have the third level, the advanced level, whereas all the citizenship is also very clearly involved in resiliency. This is the advanced level. So this is an example for one of the municipalities of the project. The regional government gave us access to a number of city halls, and we carried out all these assessments of resiliency, of maturity. So these are the parameters: organization, anticipation, identification of risks, and so on. For the city councils, you have include if they have achieved the goals or not. The same system, asking the experts, but also the society, has been used in our project, in many of our projects, in particular the one called REWOOP. And this was to measure the vulnerability for the old city. This is for the city of Mérida. And we carried out a survey with experts, students as well, professionals, technicians. And we concluded that the younger population didn't have answers, and in many cases they have very good answers similar to those of the experts or professionals. And recently we've been collaborating in another European project on resilient communities from the point of view of ecological transition. So for this project there were different countries participating, and there was also Spain and in particular Seville, and we carried out collaborations with different communities, for instance, with vegetable gardens, biological vegetable gardens carried out by communities, and what was their contribution to the city and how what they ate was even related to this community work. So this is all to show that we have to be very aware when we talk about resiliency. We have to be very aware of the need to involve the community. And in particular, the University of Murcia has just published a book on social health, science and innovation. And they ask us to contribute with a chapter on cultural heritage. And we carried out different surveys about the SDGs related to the risk or the threats to the cultural heritage. If they, for instance, if the citizens thought that there was a potential, that there was a risk of fires or earthquakes. So you know that here we are in a region that has the risk of earthquakes quite high. So we ask the population about all this, and we also ask about these extreme events that could happen and what were the implications for the municipality in terms of cultural heritage, if they knew or thought that the authorities were involved in this or were taking any action on this. So, or if you observe a threat, do you know what you have to do? Do you know what number to call? Or in terms of always conservation or protection of the cultural heritage. So this is the results. These are the results about anticipation and about how to find help in case of a risk situation. And the municipality with the best results is Antequera. All the results in red show that the population think that we are not ready, right? But in Antequera, there is something going on. Antequera is one of the municipalities that usually participates in our projects, and they have been working with the community for many years. Community meaning schools, but also elderly population. And I mean, they have already show the population that people have to be proactive in this response and in these matters. I have to say that we've already carried out 3 simulations for the protection of cultural heritage about fires, earthquakes, and floods in museums, archives, churches, and it is not easy sometimes, in a library as well, and lately in the Dolmen's complex, and we have a partnership with them, and we want to keep working in all that has to do with resiliency. Well, more things about it. Okay, when dealing with risk, we all know, we always think about earthquakes, floods as part of this response to extreme events in this search of resiliency. But we have to know that in this kind of events, we will directly think about our family. So we just published a paper about management of emergencies, the human factor, and I would like to highlight a number of insights here. And it is this chapter number 11 that shows how we need to know what's our family going to do in case of an extreme event. And another chapter 13, by Marta Hernandez and Estrella Sanz, about the risks of vandalism 2.0. So we know that a number of paints have been vandalized in the Maritime Museum, and we are constantly trying to protect ourselves from this lack of culture in terms of heritage conservation. So more cases, just 2 examples. So I'm telling you about it, but I expect you to react later on, please. So we've been working in Popayán, Asunción de Popayán, in Colombia. It is a World Heritage City with an amazing old city. I think it is one of the very few Holy Weeks that is considered World Heritage as well. It's not the case in Seville, I believe. And there is a number of threats there. So, El Niño, La Niña, extreme climate events, volcanoes, earthquakes, and something important as well, which is the guerrilla problem. They signed a peace agreement, and they told me, no, don't worry, there is not anymore these miraculous fishing. We can go from here to Cali by car and you're not going to be kidnapped, right? And I was like, oh, okay, so good. And we have to be aware of this kind of risks, because sometimes it's like, let's deal with World Heritage. Well, take a moment, and first of all, we have to deal with the problems of the communities, and then involve and then integrate heritage protection in there. So we also carried out a number of surveys there to ask people what they thought that was important for the resilience, and we asked them about the implication of politicians and if they and what they thought about conservation. And the population thought that conservation was a priority, but they believed that politicians didn't care about this. So we include all these in our math models for the assessment of risk, resiliency, and in the plans to tackle the future or to identify priorities. One of the ongoing projects we have now about resilience consists of a survey in Valencia, Murcia, and Andalucía about and we started before the Dana, so we had to stop, and now we hired a journalist that is going to carry out all the surveys for the 60 plus participants. And we've also developed a game for children, so they can go into a museum or an archive or an archaeological site, and they can be aware that about the need of resilience measures and protective measures. And with this game, we try to show or to make the children understand the idea of threats, vulnerability, exposure, risk. So I'm afraid many adults don't know this concept yet. So, but we believe we have to work with the knowledge of the adults to get to the younger population. And we have another European project ongoing now that deals with the relationship between the big green infrastructure and cultural heritage. So for this, we use big data analysis, satellites, different methodologies, simulations, experts, index, with the idea of making our cities more resilient, better adapted to the future needs. Or this morning we've seen very clearly how in the Alhambra gardens are a tool, a strategic tool to be resilient, but there is also all the buildings that need to be involved in this development. So for this, we've developed a label, a certification called Art Risk. This is the result of an AI model that is going to be obsolete by 2020, 50 or 35, I don't know, because everything's going so fast. But with this certification, we've developed 5 softwares. So they're not all are risk because there are different names. We have Earth Inspector at Risk, the one that was an award-winning project. Then we also have the mobile technology project that allows us to have the safeguarding plan in our telephones. And different index, for instance, for the plants to see if they're healthy or not. The droughts in case there are, and all the evolutions from the satellite point of view. These are free satellites, they are around us, and we just developed the model, the app. So
regarding the safeguard plan, we have developed a software, specific one, with a company, and we have used it in Antequera and in several places. The architectural site as well. We do the total cycle for giving an answer in case of emergency. We have tested it in several places. The aim is that all the people implied and participating in giving the emergency response are participating in this kind of projects that we are developing. It is essential to understand that in order to be resilient, we need to be prepared, and we need to be prepared in advance before the problem arises. And also we need to define what are our resources in order to give an answer or to respond to those issues. I think that some of those topics will be dealt with tomorrow. We gave this to the president and to the general director of civil protection. We did like a drill, and what was in red was in a good situation, and the other parts were those in which we need to make some improvements. Regarding the satellite work, what we have developed here with a company is not free software, but the rest of the softwares are. So we need to download those maps. They are compatible with the many other softwares, and also the different graphs regarding humidity, temperature, and frost, what we were talking about this morning. So you can download everything and use it whenever you want. This is something we are working on at the moment. And what are we researching? We are working in several places, Seville, Grenoble, and other parts. The relationship between green areas in order to reduce the climate change, like heat islands, how green areas can help us, and also we need to see what are the threats that we are facing, because we have forest fires that are like fourth or fifth generation fires, that they are going to destroy houses and our heritage if those fires reach the cities. We are researching all that. You can see the difference here between Seville and Grenoble in France. Next summer, we will do a summer course during the summer in order to do math simulations in emergency response. If there is a fire in La Bastille, which is a cultural heritage, and we will compare it with the different fires that we have around us. This is what we are working on at the moment, and we want to insist on what is the most important thing for us is to be trained for resilience and also to work with the community. When we are talking about the community, we are talking about firemen and the citizens, and everyone needs to be implied and participate. We all the team of observers and of all the collaborators, everything is linked to research, and research that is applied to heritage. I think, I will finish with that. I wanted to share with you all the different cases we have been working on, and I hope that we will be able to have a good debate, and that it will be useful for the models that we will develop on Friday. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you very much, Pilar. It was very interesting to get to know more about your vision of resilience. And now we are going to have the next speaker, and after that we will do a round table. So the last case study will be done by Susana Alvarez Peláez. She will talk about carbon footprint of cultural heritage assets, calculation, reduction, and compensation. Susana is an industrial engineer from the University of Seville since 2004. She has been working at the Environment and Water Agency on issues related to climate change. And currently she is the head of the department. Among other projects, she has participated in supporting the Andalusian Office for Climate Change in drafting Law 8/2018 on climate change in Andalusia, in coordinating and drafting the Andalusian Climate Action Plan, and supporting local authorities in drafting municipal plans against climate change. And she has also been working in designing and implementing the different sections of the Andalusian Emissions Compensation System, SACE. The presentation will focus on describing this tool, and she will explain how cultural properties can calculate their footprint, and in order to take measures in order to reduce it as well. I'm trying to show you the full screen, but I don't know how to do it. This is what she's saying. Okay. Excuse me. I would like to thank the board, the Council of the Alhambra, for having invited me to participate, and also to the Department of the Environment and Sustainability, because we want to share with you our initiative about the Andalusian system of emissions compensation. Well, we are not working on cultural heritage, so I'm learning a lot since I've been sharing with you this morning. But as the Office of Climate Change of the Regional Government of Andalusia, we offer a transversal service to the whole regional government in order to develop climate change policies in our field. And we also support the different local entities in order to develop their climate action. I'm going to share with you what we do regarding the Andalusian emissions compensation system and what is its application and how it could be useful for the whole sector working on cultural heritage. First of all, what is the Andalusian emissions compensation system? It is a voluntary scheme that provides the private sector and also the public sector, the different entities of the private sector, of the public sector. They are allowed to, we offer the opportunity to counteract climate change in a very simple way. What we try is to promote that different organizations can calculate their carbon footprint, and they are able to do like reduction plans according to the emissions that they have calculated. We think that it is the first step in order to reduce emissions in our own organization is to get to know exactly what are the levels of these emissions. So calculating this carbon footprint is essential and key. This system allows us to do this calculation and to create a reduction plan and to do this offsetting or compensation of those emissions that were not reduced by using different actions in different projects, like through carbon absorption projects. This system, the SACE, S-A-C-E, is an administrative registry in which we can include several factors. One of the sections is related to carbon footprint. These carbon footprints can be linked to the organization, and we have allowed also the opportunity to creating events related carbon footprint. So when we want to calculate the carbon footprint of an event, the aim is to carry out sustainable events in the future. I will explain more in details what we do with those different types of footprints. This SACE is based on the Law 8/2018 that was passed in 2018 and was applied in January 2019. We have created the Andalusian system for compensating emissions with several sections, and also with the requirement of doing that in coordination with the National Registry of Carbon Footprints that is managed by the Andalusian Office of Climate Change in the Ministry of Ecology and Climate Change. And we have several articles that are detailing all the functioning of the system. It is based, therefore, in an Andalusian law. This registry has several sections, and one of them is linked to the registry of well, in the three sections, well, we have one section for registering different events that create different emissions, and also we have different projects aiming at absorbing carbon. And also there is a third section joining both previous sections. Well, people that are registering or including their footprint, and other companies that works in different activities for the absorption of different types of emissions. Like there are, for instance, blue carbon projects and companies developing this kind of projects. So in the third section of compensation, we put them in together. So those companies that need to compensate their emissions can do that. So in this third section, well, in the first part, we have organizations that this system has been working since 2019, and it is working exactly as the one of the ministry. So this is publicly available in the site of climate change. We have finished the third quarter of 2025 with 355 organizations and 702 footprints, because the registry of carbon footprints for organizations, the idea is to keep on working with the different organizations and to make them be there for a long time. An organization that is going to calculate its footprint for the first time will keep on doing that for several years. So, for instance, the University of Granada has registered its carbon footprint since 2019 and until 2024. So people registering there normally stay and keep on calculating their footprint. So we can see the evolution of the number of footprints and the number of organizations that are there. And the figures that we have now are related to the third quarter of this year, 2025. We are above the evolution that we have had in the past years, and we haven't finished the year yet. We know that here in the Alhambra and Generalife Council, they are trying to start calculating their footprint, carbon footprint, as an organization as well, so they will be included there. In order to do this registration of an organization's carbon footprint in the Southern Register, we need to do a formal request by email. We are trying to make everything in a very telematic way, but it won't be available until the beginning of next year. But now you need to do a formal request by email with a different type of information. So we need to have the report of results of the footprint calculation. So we need to define the footprint limits or the organization activities that are included. Well, this is a voluntary registry, and we want to welcome all those that are aiming at calculating their footprint. Several organizations are especially difficult or complex. So we want to extend the scope. In our agency, we've been calculating our footprint since 2016, and we started with the headquarters, and further on we have included several offices and centers. We have the 4th labs and all the different centers of the Infoca, all different centers of public use. So now we have our whole company included, but we started little by little. This is a possibility. And also for the scopes, we have 1+2 scopes, and the voluntary scope is number 3. The number 1 and 2 are the number of emissions that are calculated. And it is also compulsory. Everything that I've listed here is compulsory, but we also need to do a carbon footprint reduction plan after analyzing the carbon footprint. we need to see what we are doing most of GHG emissions. It is compulsory, but we don't have specific requirements and specific goals and specific ways of calculating or measuring or doing that in several years. But the company needs to compare with other companies and to see what are their situation and to do a realistic reduction plan. So the content of the plan is free. It's can be adapted to everyone. The external verification is not mandatory, and our procedures are quite simple, and it is complementary with the national registry. That means that when you ask or you request your registration in the software register, you can say that you want to be registered at the same time in the national registry, and we do all that together. So the relationship with the company is all the time with us. The ministry or the national level will not get in contact with them. So everything is done in a very easy way. An organization can register their footprint in the national registry as well as in the SAFE. Well, what is the carbon footprint? We calculate emissions regarding 3 different scopes. Scope 1 is linked to the direct emissions, like the consumption of fossil carburants, and everything is linked to that. Different kind of elements for generating heat, for instance, and everything that is consumed in different vehicles and machineries and that is used for that. So when we do the carbon footprint, we need to see all the different bills that we have of the consumptions, and you need to do it because you need to have everything related to that because of the law, and you have a monitoring of everything related to different refrigerations and different machinery. The second scope number 2 is the electricity consumption. So both scopes need to be assessed. And also scope number 3, this is more difficult to assess because it doesn't depend on the company itself alone. For instance, we need to see the emissions linked to travels of the employees when they go to different working areas, the purchase of products and services, and waste management. This is very difficult because it is hard to gather all the data.
And so for the companies that are starting to work with our system, we support them, and then we suggest they start with scope 1 and 2, and then we encourage them to add some scope 3 emissions as well. And then we carry out from our office all the technical validation of the footprint. We issue a resolution on the registration on this report that is certified by our department. It is also published in our platform in the SACE register, and we award the company a certification, a label, so they can show it in their advertising or in their buildings or wherever they want. And in case they have requested the transfer of this footprint, the communication of this footprint to the national register, we can do it as well. So depending on the options selected, if they only carry out the calculation, also the reduction, or the 3 options: calculation, reduction, and offsetting. So this is for the organization's footprint. And quite recently, we've also created the footprint for events. So this registry of carbon footprint for events is active since 2024, since December. It is the only registry in a public administrations that allow us to report or to register the carbon footprint for events. We also have a decree 215/2024 that was approved recently, and that is about the carbon footprint registry. It gives the possibility to register events footprints at the national level, but the reality is that the tools needed for that are not available yet. So the SAFE, the Andalusian register, is the only one available in Spain to register events footprints. It has nothing to do with the criteria and methods for the organization's footprint, but we are starting on it. So 9 promoters are active now, and up to 17 events. We will have that done very recently. Some of them are promoted by the regional government. So to have the necessary tools, we've carried out pilot case studies, and finally these cases have been inscribed. So one of the promoters is the regional government itself. And we have a lot of insights, data, documents that we've generated throughout this process. And they are all available in our portal, all the tools, all the forms. Users are not required to use them, but it is much easier if they use them. So, because all the questions are together there in those documents. We have also the manuals, information on how to use the calculators, and all the tools actually. In order to register an event carbon footprint, we also start by sending an email. It's the same way. We also have a calculator. It's very similar to the one for the companies or organizations. But for this one, we are the only administration that has available this public free calculator. And we also have different forms and models. So in this case, this calculation for the events can be a little bit more difficult than the one for organizations, because we need data from external stakeholders, let's say service providers and also users. So I've seen that we are working on the calculation of the footprint of this particular event, and I'm very glad to see it, and I hope you are going to demand the registration in the SAFE as well. So I encourage you to use the QR code, so I insist on that myself as well. And yeah, please fill that form, because it is a key information that we need. Participants and users of the events are essential in order to have all the data we need. So, because the displays, the transport of assistants and participants are up to 80% of the carbon footprint of an event, so that's why it is so important. And well, we've divided the carbon footprint in different chapters, let's say, catering, for instance, and all the assembly in case there is stages or installations to make, and also an assembly, and then there is an aggregator of the results in the calculators. And we also have a training manual for the use of the calculators. Here you have some of the examples of events that we have already registered in SAFE. They do not have to do with cultural heritage necessarily, but well, we've done our best. These are all events promoted by the Department of the Regional Government. So we have the 2024 Andalusian Environment Awards ceremony here in Granada. We also have the 2023 finals of the Copa del Rey that we carried out with the Football Federation in Seville. It has nothing to do, you can see the results, the kilograms of equivalent CO2 by attendee, so it's very different. We also compared a different match with the Betis and the Valencia teams, and there was much less kilos because half of the attendees were from the city, were locals, so it makes a huge difference. We also have the presentation ceremony for the technical guidelines for municipal climate change plans for municipalities under 50,000 inhabitants. It took place in Antequera, and we also carried out this calculation with a very low level of equivalent CO2 tons, or kilos. And finally, about emissions offsetting, this is the less developed part of the project, but we still keep deploying efforts in order to finish it very soon and to give the opportunity to offset their emissions to all the organizations or events participating in the register. So we have the opportunity of carrying out green carbon events, and we are also pioneers in Andalusia, offering the possibility of carrying out blue carbon, for instance, in different ecosystems such as marshes, for instance, and we have other kind of events about agriculture and forestry. This is the article number 37 of our law, and already in 2019 this article enabled the possibility of carrying out all these kind of projects, so afforestation and reforestation, forest conservation, coastal ecosystem projects in the Mediterranean Sea, and many different things actually. So this legislation was also really innovative because it was the first to mention all these types of projects. Before that, all the laws mentioned only afforestation and reforestation projects, but this is a much wider variety of possibilities to offset the emissions. And we have the green carbon, and we also have the blue carbon. Well, when we started carrying out all these projects, the ministry had already developed its plan, and we wanted mainly to align with them. And that's why we decided the following, that all the projects that get here to be registered about afforestation or reforestation under the cases foreseen by the ministry that are reforestation of burned areas and change of land use, we send them to the ministry register, and they are registered in the ministry because of the in order to avoid this parallel registration into different registries. But what we want to do is to help to support the development of afforestation and reforestation projects here in Andalusia. And what we're doing for that is promoting this Andalusian catalogue of forest offset projects. This is a catalogue of potential projects in Andalusian land. This is a very hard work, actually, that was published by the end of 2024. In February 2025, the resolution was approved. And in this resolution, we established all the requirements to access to this catalogue. There are actually currently 27 projects in all the Andalusian territory, and for every province, the territorial administration is involved. If a company wants to carry out a project in these territories, they have to contact the administration get access to the catalog, and they can also have the possibility to participate partially in a project, not fully. So there are many options actually. And we also have the blue carbon projects with our flagship projects, because they can only be developed in Andalusia by now. So these are projects for the recovery of marshes, for instance, and these are absorption projects in the framework of a registry that allows offsetting. Then it's only in Andalusia. And this is the result of a LIFE project entitled Life Blue Natura that took place between 2016 and 2021 with the participation of the Environment Department, the UCN, and the research intelligence services in Spain. And the project involved the creation of an Andalusian carbon standard for the certification of blue carbon credits. This is also verified and approved by a resolution of the General Direction in line with European regulations. And we also developed a calculator and a methodology for CO2 absorption. We created a catalog of absorption projects with pilot projects, 4 specifically. They're not easy to implement because they are conditioned by many regulations and because of territorial restrictions, but we are very close to finish the first pilot project of blue carbon in Andalusia. That's going to be started very, very soon. And well, it has been a huge amount of work to develop all these projects, because these are public territories with a mixed management, land and coastal management, and you have to find an agreement between many different stakeholders. But we're now very close to getting to the end in this kind of projects. And I like to insist that we carried out a call for projects. We had a consultancy company, the University of Cádiz as well, and the administration. So for us, this experience has been really exciting and enriching, and in particular our partnership with the University of Cádiz, because they update our tool and they're helping us to scale up this our scope actually, and to get to be present as well in the marine areas and wetlands. And also to mention another project for which we're trying to create methodology and calculators. It is another LIFE project entitled Cork, and the Department of Environment is involved as well, Agriculture and Forestry Department, and we are developing a methodology and a calculator for management of slow-growing forests for climate change mitigation. So this is being developed in the natural park of the Alcornocales in the province of Cádiz. This is a project that still have 2 or 3 more years, but we are very active actually in this project. So this is all I wanted to share. Thank you so much. This is the email address where we can answer any question you may have or share information if you need it. And that's all. Thank you. Well, thank you very much. There's no doubt this is a very interesting tool. It is a fundamental pillar to measure what we're doing. If we are not able to measure, to assess, to evaluate, then it's very difficult that we can advance. The University of Granada actually has been working for a couple of years now on a methodology to assess the carbon footprint of its events, and we're working on it currently, and we want to give the opportunity to the events carried out in the framework of the university to measure, to calculate their footprints. So we are hoping we'll be able to collaborate with you. So it is now 5:10. We are a little bit late, but I had prepared a number of questions I shared with the speakers. But I don't know, is there any question in the audience? Because we will really like the audience to participate. If not, the speakers can come here to the table, please. So, is there any question in the audience? Yes, I have a question for Susanna. Well, an organization, a company, for instance, that wants to be responsible and wants to register and calculate Scope 1 and Scope 2 emissions can actually complete the cycle without including a Scope 3? I mean, can a company make the offsetting process, carry out the offsetting process without getting into Scope 3? No, actually, yeah, it's totally possible. Scope 3 is a voluntary scope. It has nothing to do with our process. I mean, a company can get to Scope 2 and then they can have a plan, a reduction plan. It is a self evaluation and a proposal for improvement. And there are companies that are at earlier stages. They can't do many things and they can't adopt many measures yet. And we are very tolerant in that sense. I mean, the company has to decide its level of commitment. And yes, it is independent from Scope 3 emissions. And when we deliver a reduction plan, is because we've proven that through the years we've been able to reduce not our footprint but our CO2 tons index, the ratio actually. So every company, every organization uses a ratio, a particular ratio. At the administration, we do it by the number of employees in order to reflect on the size of the organization. But this is not absolute value, actually. And in order to have the reduction plan, you need to have footprints at once, actually. You can go backwards. There are many organizations that once they understand this and they know they are going to obtain the certification, they make an extra effort to register 1, 2, 3 or even more footprints at once, and they have to show, they have to prove that the footprints they are registering, the ratio actually is lower than the ratio of the average of the 3 previous years. That's why we talk about the 4 years, but you can do it at once and then you can calculate an offset, or you can also reduce an offset, what you want.
More questions? No more questions. I had several questions until the end of the session before the visit to the exhibition. But in order to have a debate, I sent to the members, to the speakers, several questions, and one of them is linked to new technologies and ethics. We are thinking about the use of AI and how this requires to think about this technological part. I mean, I had work in the field of engineering, and when were trained as engineers, in the past we have a very humanistic side that was studied, but now we have lost it. So I think we need to think about that, because new technologies are a key element nowadays, and they help us to develop several tools and to have a different approach towards heritage. But what I wanted to point out here regarding new technologies and heritage, I wonder how these kind of tools as AI and digital means can transform the way we think, we preserve, and we consider heritage without putting the situation at risk. Well, I'm going to start. First of all, I'm very clear about that. Ethics and AI, well, they have their own specialists and experts. Well, all those who work in developing new apps or applications of AI, this is a topic that is very essential for us. In this case, it is even more important. I cannot talk about ethics without regulation. I mean, there are several tools from the new generation of internet technologies helping us to reach those aims related to ethics, verification and preservation of identity, and everything is there regarding the technology. But we cannot talk about ethics in this type of applications without talking about regulation. This is something that is very debated and discussed, because the European Union is the first continent that has decided to regulate AI, artificial intelligence, and we have the new AI Act, which is the decree of the European Union focusing on several measures towards the regulation of AI. So in order to get that those applications are critical regarding those kind of preservation of the information. For instance, for the management of an infrastructure, a motorway, if there is an algorithm that is managing this kind of infrastructure, we are opening the door to the fact that a terrorist organization can intervene or use these algorithms and create accidents. And if there is an algorithm that is in charge of controlling the lighting of the subway of London, they can turn off the lights of the subway, and this could lead to several problems as well if a terrorist attack is produced. So ethics, security, these are keywords related to AI and its application in management. And for me, of course, regulation needs to exist. In the United States, they don't want to regulate. In Asia, it's almost the same. So we have an excess of regulation promoted by Europe, and also a lack of regulation in the United States. So we need to make the right balance, and we need to be there. And this is where ethics are important. It's like ethics in a society. A society cannot be ethical if we don't have laws showing us what is good and what is bad. It is very similar of what we've done with the people. We need to do the same thing with different devices and machines, and those machines have their intelligence, and they are quite similar to us regarding the intelligence, and we need to regulate all that. This is my point of view. It is a very personal one. Thank you. Well, of course, I totally agree with what he said. I'm not an expert in the field of ethics or AI. I work with mathematicians and physicians. They develop the softwares that I would like to use. But now we are working with Grenoble, and in case we have an emergency situation, how people are going to react. And the research law say that everything we do needs to be available, all the articles, the primary data. So the University of Grenoble, Europe and France said we are not going to publish our data because we are talking about people. We have data from people in order to do this kind of simulation, so they have such a high level of protection at the university and the Risk Institute. So we said to the European Union, okay, we had the money, but we are not able to publish all the information because this is linked to the security of the people. At a personal level, at the University of Granada has been the first university that has published several uses of AI in education, administration works in the university. This is a guide that I recommend you to read because it's worth it. And I'm considering the possibility of teaching my students about risks, heritage, etc. And my students are going to use AI, so I need to be the first one using it to see how it is used and how they are going to use it as well. I asked the other day, create an image for a PowerPoint with a drill, and you can, show, a cathedral that is on fire, for instance. And what is AI doing? I said, okay, we haven't seen the team of cultural heritage. They were not AI, we're not including them. So we are improving AI ourselves. So when they finished, we saw that all the teams were made by men. And I said, I want 50% of the participants to be women. So, the AI was unable to do it. So up to that, they started including all the different teams I was suggesting. And then I said, where women are. And it started, it was unable. I don't know what the amount of water that it requires for that, because some of our students say that they don't use GPT chat because it requires a high consumption of water as well, or expenditure. Is anyone would like to add anything? Another aspect that we have talked about is related to resilience and environmental sustainability. We don't have a lot of time left, but I will suggest a question. We've seen several examples of different works for the preservation of heritage. We have analyzed the life cycle analysis. And are we prepared? I mean, at the institutional level, in the field of conservation, are they prepared to start using these kind of tools? When we talk about resilience from the adaptive point of view, or different tools as the LCA tool, life cycle analysis, in order to be able to keep on making progresses within the field of sustainability from your different points of view, because we are talking about research, but are the different institutions really using these tools that you have developed in the field of research? Susana, please. Well, regarding climate change, in our point of view, in our department, everything related to adaptation, well, is a little bit behind the implementation of the different policies for the reduction of emissions. But adaptation has arrived, and the European Union has created its own adaptation strategy. The concepts are there. Institutions and public and private institutions as well are considering what measures needs to be taken for that. So first of all, what we always say is that we need to estimate the risks, and this cannot be done in a transversal way as it can be done in our office. But what we do is to offer tools and methodologies so as the different persons in charge of different departments and political departments, or those in charge of cultural heritage, for instance, are able to properly analyze the risks that they are facing regarding climate change, what are the different measures or actions that could be applied, and what are the effects or impacts. Instead of doing that afterwards, we need to start anticipating and see what are the different measures and what are the different results, and to do like a kind of adaptive management, to do all the different amendments and modifications once we are doing and working. After what we've heard this morning, I've seen that the several examples that you shared with us regarding conservation of cultural heritage, I think this is a very important work. You've explained what you're doing here with the gardens, and this is exactly what we need. We need to analyze the lack or the scarcity, water scarcity, and what is happening with high temperatures, with climate events, extreme climate events, and what are the different actions that need to be implemented. Those actions are not extremely expensive, but when we have an in-depth knowledge of the situation, we are able to find solutions and to analyze the evolution of those solutions in order to adapt them to the new reality. So it's totally possible to create adaptive measures in order to adapt to the climate change with a very in-depth risk assessment and a very good knowledge of what we are doing. I love talking, so sorry for that, but what I wanted to share with you that when we talk about risk assessment, in general, we are doing many things in that field. We have tools, and well, there is something that is very clear when we talk about sustainability and climate emergency. Like small kids and grandparents, they all know about that. But when we need to explain that in cultural heritage conservation, we have big places as the Alhambra, which are aware of these problems. We have seen Kew Gardens, or Germany or Italy, different places with resources, and they are very well aware of the problems. But when we arrive to small cities, to small villages, they don't have so many resources. And when we talk about the environment, they say, okay, we do that with water and that. But when we talk about culture, they don't know how to think about those topics. We have a building that is a heritage, and sometimes when we talk about refrigeration systems and air conditioning, they are not aware of such problems. Sometimes we work in silos, in islands, environment, culture, and different elements. And when we talk about climate change, we think about big problems. When we have a fire, we need to know the health of our plants, because this will make that the fire keeps advancing quicker or not. So sometimes we are not interlinked. We work in different silos, and it is important to work together for the resilience. We need to know the community. I know you know the firemen here because you work here, you do these drills as well as in the Alhambra, but when we are working in big places, it's always working, but we need to reach small communities as well. The Department of Culture has signed a convention with the President's department, and also a different convention with other departments. So step by step, they are making progresses in the field, and Andalusia, in this sense, is in a better situation compared to other autonomous communities here in Spain. Voy a intentar en inglés, pero
because I think, well, in the case of my student, I have got a course of waste management, and he explained that life cycle assessment, it is really important to know exactly what is the effect, the negative impact or the positive impact. The application of life cycle assessment, because I think that it is still in the initial, no?
Yeah, it depends on the sectors that we are addressing. I mean, in general, in sectors like building materials for new buildings, life cycle assessment is already applied, for example, in the environmental product declarations, which are these documents that are becoming more and more frequent, and they accompany building materials. While in the field of conservation, this approach is absolutely not common, and I actually think that it should be implemented, especially for getting a better knowledge of the situation. Like in the example that I showed, I found surprising that there are aspects of materials that are absolutely not considered, like the containers for chemicals, or the material which is used to apply a solvent or a pigment. So a better knowledge of the factors leading to impact, in my opinion, is necessary to try to improve, in my case, the materials and technologies that are used. But in any case, the assessment of the environmental impact, and also the improvement, the technological improvement on the side of materials, should be always joined with a proper taking care of heritage. It may seem something trivial, and this is absolutely not the right place to tell it, because Alhambra has a wonderful permanent staff working, plenty of people working for its maintenance and taking care. But in many other contexts, there is not such a permanent staff, and there is an impressive trust on the possibility offered by new technologies. But new technologies and new materials are nothing without a continuous taking care of monuments. For example, in Italy, in many occasions, authorities think that a couple of conservation works in a century are able to fix everything and to solve everything, while, in my opinion, it's not true, because we need a continuous maintenance, and we need a better knowledge on how to take care of our monument. So I think that the adaptation and the resilience concept requires, first of all, knowledge, and life cycle assessment can help, but also a proactive approach to conservation, which is something which is important also for adapting to this climate change, because extreme events and changes requires a continuous state of attention, I would say. So all these aspects, quantitative and cultural, must be kept together as much as possible, in my opinion.
Thank you. Bueno, pues yo creo que ya vamos a finalizar y voy a lanzar una última pregunta de a ver si me podéis responder en
but still one last question to be answered very, very, very fast. So this has to do with the expertise of in the field I come from. So is there something that when managing in the university, when managing sustainability issues, the first thing we have to do as an institution is to be an example, to set example. So one of the measures we're trying to apply is to adopt measures relating to different dimensions of sustainability and to give visibility to the actions we're taking and the contributions we're making. For instance, sustainable events, assessment of our carbon footprint, trying to have some kind of impact in the mobility, even though it is not our responsibility, because it has to do with other departments, but for people who come every day to our schools and faculties, so try to promote a sustainable mobility. But so the question is, what do you think regarding heritage conservation? What can be an example for the society? So how these conservation measures applied by institutions, by the Alhambra Council, and by other stakeholders involved, how can you be an example? How can you set an example for the society? 1 minute each, maybe? Very briefly, please. Well, we have to learn from the past. This is the only way to live in the future. For me, that's it. Today, we've seen how in Bucharest, they're going to have a climate similar to, Hungary, right? A similar climate to the one in the south of Turkey. So we've been suffering from high temperatures from a very long time. We had these ditches, traditional irrigation canals, and we have to learn from the past. And this is the project I just presented here. Old people teaching the new generations. So we have to be very aware of that, and we have to limit our environmental expenditure by individuals, and we have to be careful with that consumption levels as well. And this has to do with tradition a lot. Well, this is it. You ask us if we can set an example from the institutions, and I believe it is just essential. So from in our office we have one of these principles, let's say. So we are responsible for carrying out actions that are examples, that set examples. So the people in charge of the different departments, they have to be aware of what they can do, and they also have to tell it to the world. So if you in the university, you've made an effort to calculate your footprint and calculate the footprint of your events, so this effort is very important, but it is equally important to tell the society that you're doing this. That's your function as well, to be an example. This is something that the authorities have to do, and I'm an authority and I'm doing it. So this is something that is very effective for the society. And just to close very briefly, so we have to adopt sustainability measures, visibilize them, be very transparent as well, and take everything to the social media, to our websites. And I say social media because for the young population it is the main channel, but yeah, we have to tell the world what we're doing. Yeah, Susanna just said what I was going to say. Yeah, that's all. So communication is essential. We have to visibilize what we do, and also very important if we want to set an example, because we are university, we are an education institution, we also have to show how we do things. So we can publish good practices, guides, guidelines, orientations, or whatever. So yeah, I was going to say the same actually. Bueno, espero poder dar una
Let's say
respuesta
that
adecuada.
for sure the approach to taking care of cultural heritage can be an example also for other fields, because actually the approach is the same to taking care of the environment. It's something that we have inherited from the past and that we are supposed to transmit to future generation in a not depleted way. So I see many analogies between taking care of environment through sustainability and taking care of cultural heritage through conservation, maintenance, resilience, and so on. So I think that also by teaching how to take care of our cultural heritage, we are actually teaching an approach, which is an approach of commitment for environment, heritage, people, and so on.
Bueno, pues vamos a dar por finalizada la sesión. Sí que me gustaría, pues a lo mejor
Close
resaltar.
now this session. I would like to highlight some of the key points of the day. Just quick notes. I really liked what you said about heritage as an asset, and I've searched the definition of assets, and it is a resource with an economic value that belongs to a person and that can produce future profit. Also the fact of considering our heritage as a lab to test things, the matter of ethics, the sensibility, the sensible character of data, and how we have to be very careful. Data is a co-pilot that can be very helpful, but we have to be careful when we use them as well. And how we share our values as human beings, of course, and we're not machines. And also about resilience. It seems to be a new concept, but it's something like very mainstream. Actually, we are all resilient, and heritage is alive. It is born, it grows, it reproduces maybe, and it finally dies. And how important it is, resilience and anticipation, adaptation, reparation as well, and many other aspects that are determining for sustainability of the heritage, but also of the cities, and the role of the administrations and the institutions in general as examples. We've seen this SAFE register about compensation offsetting of carbon emissions, and we have to be the first to do it. We are responsible for that. We are in the society of communication, and finally it is essential to communicate. And particularly important, and I say this because of my experience in the social media, because I'm not very good friends with social media. I'm not managing to adapt to them, but we have to be there. We have to be there. There's no option if we want to communicate what we're doing. And just to finish, highlighting that heritage is a very good example, and it illustrates very well the sustainability, the idea of sustainability with its various dimensions, economical, human, and so we have to ensure sustainability for the future, and we have to think that heritage is not something from the past. It's something absolutely contemporary, because it incarnates this sustainability dimensions and values. So thank you. Thanks to all the participants, all the speakers, the audience, and I hope the conclusions of the day are interesting to you all. Thank you.